I worked part-time as a janitor at a school for 8 years. This was in the middle of December in 2014 in Akron, Ohio. Since my car was in the shop, I had to walk to and back home from work for a week. I really don't know much about cars at all, but something with the brake line was messed up and something else. I think the oil pan as well, because my car was leaking oil. A few days prior, I was on my way driving home from work and I hit a huge pile of snow and slush, and my car swerved off the road into a ditch. I was lucky enough to not be hurt, but the car, not so much. I hit a speed limit sign and I ran over it completely. Anyways, I ended up driving home. I was less than a mile from home, and this was before I knew my car was leaking oil. So I called a tow truck to come pick my car up, and it was taken to my town's local mechanic. Anyways, that's how I wound up in this situation. Luckily, I live right next to the school I worked at, and it was only about a 5 to 10 minute walk for me. It was a normal day of school, and everything was going just fine. Up until lunchtime, that is. The school I worked at was an intermediate school that taught 5th and 6th graders, so they had recess every day, even in the winter. I noticed some guy who seemed out of place to me. I didn't recognize him. He was standing there on the sidewalk behind the fence, staring at all the kids on the playground. I almost walked over there and told him to get away, but I wasn't sure it was my place. He definitely seemed like a creep, but I decided to hold back and keep a close eye on him. He ended up walking away a few minutes later, and I didn't see him again until after school on my way back home. I was just getting to the entrance of my neighborhood when, all of a sudden, I saw somebody up ahead. They were still quite far, but right off the bat, I could tell that they were just standing there. They weren't moving a muscle at all. I couldn't even tell if he was looking at me or if I was just overthinking, but I was starting to feel creeped out. So instead of walking towards him, I decided to take a little detour home. So I took a sharp right down the next street. After walking for a minute, I looked behind me about a minute later and he was now following behind. It only took me a few moments to realize it was the same guy from earlier. As soon as I put 2 and 2 together, I realized that I was doomed and my heart sank into my stomach. All of a sudden, he started running at me. I as well started running, and soon after, I made it home. Thankfully, I was much faster than him because I don't know what would have happened had I not have been. I may have gotten away, but I wasn't necessarily in the clear just yet. Yes, I was home and safe, however, he now knew where I lived. Within a matter of seconds after getting inside and trying to catch my breath, he was now knocking at my door. "Let me in, or I swear, there's going to be hell to pay." In a panic, I whipped my phone out and I called the police. I waited for them to get there the whole time, just praying he wasn't going to try and bash open a window and do who knows what. Luckily, that didn't happen, but what did happen was something that I will truly never forget. He grabbed a chair from my front porch and put it in front of the door, and he stood on it so he could look inside through the window at me. I'll never forget the look on his face. This creepy smile. It was a smile of a sadistic and very cold man that absolutely loved to know I was terrified of him. The cop showed up less than 5 minutes later and arrested him, thankfully, but I worried for a long time that when he got out of jail that he was going to come back for round 2. Hell, I still even get paranoid about it even to this very day that he's going to come back, like when I'm sleeping or something in the middle of the night. I was only 16 when this happened. My friend Matthew came over and he was staying the night. Really, we didn't usually do a whole lot other than play video games and just mess around the house, roughhousing and whatnot. We were in the basement, which was my dad's man cave. My dad has a bar down there, and a pool table, a hockey table, a huge TV, and tons of other cool things. It was like 9 o'clock, and we were both bored and restless. I don't know why, but we thought it would be fun and a good idea to drink a bunch of caffeine and try to pull an all-nighter. That's not something we would usually do, but I don't know what got into us that night. I'm sure it was because we were excited about hanging out and wanted to have as much fun as possible before school on Monday. It probably didn't help that our teen hormones were practically raging. Out of nowhere, Matthew thought of a great idea. "Why don't we go outside?" he asked. I wasn't sure how I felt about that at first. I mean, it sounded fun to sneak out or whatever, but my parents would be pissed if they found out. So I told him that I wasn't really sure it was a good idea. "Oh, come on," he said. It took some convincing, but eventually we came up with a plan to sneak out and what we were going to do. It was the dead middle of winter, by the way, and it was very cold. It was snowing out as well, and quite heavily at that. I dug through my closet to get ourselves a couple sweatshirts to layer up with to help keep us warm, and then off we were. We snuck out through the garage door. The first step we took outside, we quickly realized just how bad it was snowing. The snow had picked up quite a bit from earlier on, but you see, I didn't want to chicken out in front of my friends, so I made an impulse decision. I guess it wasn't that big of a deal anyway. I turned back around and I grabbed a few beers from my dad's cooler in the garage, along with a couple shots of some cheap whiskey as well. Matthew seemed excited about the beer and we were ready to go. I live in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road, by the way, so there weren't really any streetlights, or barely any light at all for that matter. It was pitch dark. It was creepy, but also kind of fun at the same time. We walked for probably about a mile down the road, all while chugging our drinks, until we started to realize that what we were doing wasn't as exciting as we hoped it to be. We started heading back home and we finished up with the last of the alcohol that we had and we tossed the cans into the ditch. When suddenly, I had an idea spark in my head. There was this trail that I completely forgot about near my house that I always wanted to explore at night, and it was the perfect time. We were bored, drunk, and literally had nothing better to do. We couldn't have slept if we tried either, so off we were. I'm not even exaggerating when I tell you that, as soon as we got to the entrance of the trail, we saw a dark shadow glooming ahead. It looked like a human, but at the same time, it was so dark that we thought maybe our heads were playing tricks on us. "Hey, idiot, what do you want?" Matthew said. By this point, we were feeling good and probably a bit overconfident from the alcohol. I sort of nudged at Matthew after he yelled, and I asked him what the hell his problem was. "My problem is this stupid guy ahead thinks he's scary and owns a trail," he said. Almost as soon as he said that, the man up ahead started whistling. That literally sent a shiver down my spine. It was just really weird and eerie. "Okay, bro, I think it's time to go," I told Matthew. "Yeah, you might be right, bro," he said. So we turned around and we started walking back home. And of course, Matthew screamed at the guy one last time and called him a creep. Only a matter of seconds after that, we heard 2 loud gunshots. "He just shot at us, bro. What the hell? Are you okay?" I asked. "Dude, we don't have time to talk. Just run," Matthew said. The chase was now on. Out of nowhere, Matthew drunkenly tripped over a stump and I had to turn around to help him up. It was at this point that the man was running towards us. We still had at least 5 minutes of running before we were in the clear, so it was a good thing we were faster than him. I'm not sure why he shot in our direction. I feel like he wanted to scare us to teach us a lesson, but then again, why was he just there by himself in the middle of the woods during a blizzard at like 11 o'clock at night? I know we were outside as well, practically doing the same thing, but he was by himself, which is really creepy and weird if you ask me. We kept running and finally we made it home. The man stopped following us after about a minute, and we never knew what to fully make of what happened. We snuck back inside and talked about the situation all night until eventually we fell asleep. This was seriously the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. I never snuck out of the house after that night, ever again. My wife and I were staying in a cabin up north in the Upper Peninsula. We were taking a quick vacation. It was the perfect getaway for us. We both had time off of work and the kids were with their grandparents all week while we had all the free time in the world. The cabin was very secluded and we were a good 10-minute drive at least from any homes or stores at all for that matter. We were the only sign of life, besides the animals of course, but even then it was extremely quiet. But it was also very peaceful and exactly what we needed. The first night was amazing and nothing crazy happened. It was everything we hoped it to be. Same with the second night as well. Everything was going just fine. The third day though, it was a whole different story. It was early in the morning and I went to the store to pick up some things that we needed. When I went to check out, the cashier was being a little nosy and a little too personal, as he was asking me a lot of weird questions. He seemed a bit strange to me, but I figured I was just overthinking and that maybe he was just a bored and lonely old man trying to make basic conversation. I brushed it off and I walked out of the store to my car, and he followed after me all the way outside until I got into my car, staring at me pretty much the whole time. Okay, now I knew something was off. This guy was actually weird. I thought about how sketchy that whole thing was on my drive home, and I even told my wife about it. She thought it was weird too, but we ended up forgetting about it. Come nightfall, I guess around 7:30, 8 o'clock at the latest, there was a strange noise coming from outside. I muted the TV and asked Sarah, my wife, if she heard that as well. "What? Did I hear what?" she asked. I told her I heard something loud outside and that I was surprised she didn't hear it. She must have been dozed off while she was in my lap or something, because it was pretty loud. Anyways, I got up to investigate and I looked out the window, and what I saw was disturbing. There were 3 men closing in on our property, maybe 50 feet away, walking in our direction. I immediately flipped out and I told Sarah to run and lock the door while I grabbed the gun. I turned the lights off and I made sure we stayed as quiet as possible. I wasn't sure how much of a threat they were, but something inside of me told me it wasn't good. I looked back out the same window, but this time, they were gone. That kind of made me feel better, like maybe they were just passing through and just happened that they crossed paths with us. But right after I had that thought, there were multiple knocking sounds coming from different areas of the cabin. One from the door, and the other 2 on the opposite side of the house on the windows. Sarah literally screamed because it jump scared her that badly. "We know you're in there. Now come out here like a man, or we'll have to do this the hard way," the stranger said from outside the door. I told him that I had a gun and that he better get the hell out of here before it's too late. He started laughing as if he didn't care, or if he thought I was faking it that I had a gun. Either way, it kind of freaked me out even more, because now I began to wonder if they had a gun too. Because why in the hell would you not be scared of someone with a gun? You would either have to be a legit psychopath or someone with a gun. I told him I wasn't joking and that I'm not going to warn him again. Then all of a sudden, the men began kicking the door trying to get it open. They actually managed to kick it open rather quickly, and when they did, they were greeted with my gun to their face. I literally shot at them, not even thinking about it, and I hit one of them in the leg. They seemed shocked, and the other 2 guys panicked and begged me not to hurt them, and they carried their friend off. We called the police, of course, but there wasn't a whole lot they could do. The man never went to the hospital for his injuries, so even to this day, we have no idea who they were. There's something wrong about this town, and the people in it. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe I'm insane or paranoid, but what I do know for a fact is that those people were crazy, and I don't even know what they wanted. It's a good thing they didn't have a gun though, because maybe things would have been a lot more messy. We packed our things the very next morning and we ended our mini vacation early. We never went back to that cabin, and we definitely never will be.